Now, as I said before, that it all begins and ends with you. And what I mean by that, it begins and ends with your mind, right? Remember what I said before, the first uh, woman that you break, or really your bottom woman, is your first mind. See, once you break that and then regenerate it, then the new life begins. You know, your first woman isn't the physical, or your bottom lady isn't the physical one. It's your mind. And I do apologize. I'm having some issues with the Wi-Fi due to the weather. Plus, I did it from my computer the last time. Now I'm going to actually do it from my phone. But I wanted to add more to the subject at hand. Now, when you look at the mind, right, which is actually, the universal principle. Now, within the mind, what guides and directs it is what understanding, you know, as I said before in the first segment. See how the universal mind creates. We can observe the action of our own mind, you know, because this is like the offspring of the one mind, and we both bring forth in like manner. As I said before, as I said, ancient texts, the Son can do nothing of itself but what he seeth the Father doing in the heavens. For what things soever he doeth, these the Son also doeth in like manner. So you have to understand, a man in his perfect state, or you know, within his consciousness of the one mind, has no sense of apartness. Through affirmation, he can then attune himself to his being, and transmute his thoughts into ideas and accomplish the seemingly impossible, as I've stated before. See, the mind at its starting point of every act and thought and feeling, the common meeting ground of God, right? Generator, operator, destroyer, and man that's masterly able and noble. God is mind, and we cannot describe God with human language. So we cannot describe the mind in its entirely, you know. Now you can't have the mind like God, but you can have the mind of God, you know. We can only say, I am mind. I know God is mind, as he knows. What's going on, Bina? See, the mind is the seat of our perception of the things we see, hear, and feel. It is through the mind that we see the beauties of the earth and the sky. You understand the melodies of music, the uh, the message behind the artwork. In fact, pretty much everything. It's that silent shuttle of thought, working in and out through cell and nerve, wavelengths, which makes it harmonious and electromagnetic. It's a myriad of moods of the mind. This is what we call life. See, the mind is an affirmative state of binding, holding, and processing the information. See, if man affirms his unity with the life, the substance, and the intelligence of God, he lays hold of these spiritual qualities. See, the mind, misappropriated, right, of his powers, becomes fleshly. It's a fleshly use. and you could profit nothing of the flesh, you know, but your own destruction, arising from your ignorance of the relationship between God and you. A state of your consciousness formed about a false ego or false concept of self. See, all the works of the flesh, right, are the product of a carnal state or a fallen state. Remember what I said before is about being in your risen place, in your higher self. You know, it's a lot deeper than, you know, women and even money in a sense. It's about really coming up in life. Coming up in yourself. When you come up in yourself, you come up in life. See, you get to be in your higher mind, because being in your higher mind, you change, you know, things around you. You know, I'm not saying you have to change your mind or change your perspective. See, changing your mind is the very first prerequisite to a new life. See, we go into this new and higher state of consciousness as we go into another uh, land, or the kingdom of heaven is right here, right in the midst, and will become, a tangible reality to you once you've developed the faculties necessary to comprehend it. Now, if you look at the 12 disciples, really that's the 12 faculties of man, as I stated before. See, the mind is fixed. It's a state of a combination of thoughts in our consciousness that is hard to change. Ideas, have to be crystallized. Remember the pineal gland. I'm sorry, Christos, or the black dot. See, the mind is mortal, right? Of error, and it's unregenerated. In its lower state, but in its higher state, it's immortal. You know, just a thought. you know, and that is, a consistency of ungodlike thoughts. It is the opposite of the Christos, or the God mind within you. That song by Mary Mary, "The God in Me." It's actually a dope song though. Not really into the you know, I'll say Christian music per se, but that song, was dope and it resonated with me. I felt like it was overlooked in a lot of ways, you know. But anyways, the mind and the subconscious state is the sum of all man's past thinking, also his memory. Yeah, sometimes your worst enemy is your memory. The subconscious mind sometimes acts as though separate from the conscious mind. For instance, you know, in dreams. See, the subconscious mind has no power to do, the original thinking. It can only act upon what is given, to it through the conscious or the superconscious mind. You have to understand that there's three phases within the mind, right? There's the subconscious mind, the superconscious mind, right? And then there's the crown height, the God, or the Lord, you know. This transcends both the conscious and the subconscious phases of the mind. It's kind of like a harmonious working together of these three seemingly separate minds, which is necessary to the bringing forth of the latent possibilities of man. Interesting, right? You have to understand what's abiding in you, right? From the internal aspect, you know. And with the eternal aspect, derives a beginning with no end. It's timeless, everlasting in duration. Just a thought. Any questions so far? Just wanted to add this to the other piece, to give you a better understanding, more importantly, a better understanding of how things work. You know what I mean? What up, Polo? Again, I apologize. The last time it was my. I was trying to work the buttons on my PC. It's a combination of that, and then got the fucking Wi-Fi, some cursing and everything like that. It's supposed to be a clean one, you know, but it is what it is. Again, with peace, it's a good build, indeed. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you trying over here. Now, if you look at ego, right, it's edging God out of you, right? Now, what is the lower state? Now we look at Adam and Eve, or Atom and Eve, right? Eve is our lower state. That's our, ego, vanity, and emotions. The three portals that cause us um, to not foresee, you know, what's in front of us. You know, part of really having that God mind is foreseeing, the troubles, or foreseeing the opportunity that's in front of you. You know, being able to read spirits, read through conversations, read through situations. See, when you look at the ego, right? The ego is the lower part of you. It's man, and by reason, you know, of that, it actually doesn't partake in the divinity aspect of you. You know, see, the divinity aspect of you makes and remakes, you know, your will, your state of being. In this life, it has its greatest strength. You know, but the ego is not always, it's not bad entirely. It's it can sometimes produce your greatest strength, right? Produce productivity, but it can also produce your destruction, unbalanced. Remember I said before, without wisdom and understanding, right? Your thoughts have no direction. Your ideas aren't clear, and you're not really made aware of it. You know, when you look at life, it's like this: situations are put in front of you. It's stimulus versus response. You know, when you're in your ego states, you're just reacting. You're more reactionary. You're not going from glory to glory. You're going from crisis to crisis. Trying to overcome one sad reality after another. See, when you're living in your lower state of self, or your lower plane, right, you're basically going through one sad reality after another to become somewhat of a degenerate crisis manager. It's not what you want. Any questions so far? Now, when you look at certain concepts, right, you look at certain concepts, you know you have to look at identifiers, right? The identity of certain things. you know this is how we're connected. We're connected by identification. you know and identification comes through the comparisons, and this is how the natural human mind works, based on comparisons. If you look at athletes that come out of college, the best way to understand their abilities is through comparing them to someone that's already in the league to give you an idea. You know, it's just like anything that anyone does, it has to be compared to something. It has to have an identifier, the identification, right? When you look in the mirror, you know, who do you say that you are? You know, now looking at it from a higher perspective, you said alter ego. No, not definitely not an alter ego. I think that's kind of, you know, I think it's just some things that people throw out there. It's just I think it's a demon. If anything, people say alter egos. Whenever someone says that that's their alter ego, that means they're demonically not possessed. I would say demonically oppressed by that demon. I mean, there's very few people that actually are roaming the earth that are actually demonically possessed, right? You know. But anyways, when you look at identification, right? How do you identify yourself? Now, from the spiritual remnant, how do you identify yourself, right? Spiritual identity is key, you know, to divinity and true uh, epitome of masculinity, because you're operating, you know, as God, you know, or as the divinity, you know, in a human frame, or through a human experience, you know, or being the real Christos. Excuse me. Now, you look at identifying yourself as I am being, God is I am, and man, it's all one and the same, you know, as being the offspring, you know. I am is the indwelling Lord of life, love, and wisdom found and, you know, facilitated through you, all ideas internally in that divine state. The I am is the metaphysical name of the spiritual you, as distinguished from the human self, which is one that's governed by the spirit or the other personal will. You discussed earlier the three phases, parts of the mind. You mentioned the subconscious and the superconscious, but I missed the third one. I would like to look into that later. Exactly. Well, you have your subconscious mind, right? Which is like your compartment of your memories, of your experiences, right? Then you have your conscious mind, which is basically the the middle the middle phase, between, of the ascension to godhood, to the superconscious, subconscious, conscious, and superconscious. Hopefully this music isn't drowning me out. See, when you look at the conscious state, right, it's like an eddy in the ocean. All the elements that are found in that ocean are also found in the eddy, and every eddy may, in its due course, receive the gift forth, within that ocean. Now, the superconscious would be like the wave. If that makes any sense. Hopefully, it is making sense to you. If you need me to further elaborate, please feel free to let me know. Now, when you look at, you know, I am, right? I am me. You know, I am God in me. You know, as your identity. You know, you become the will of God. You become the man that represents I am, you know, as the identity, as the individual, you know, super conscious, you know. So you got to understand the difference between seeking joy, right, versus seeking happiness through sensory pleasure. See, this is when when you're in your your subconscious state, and your lower self is when you're basically seeking pleasure through your senses, you know. As they say, that leads to what? A sin, missing the mark, missing the protocol, missing the principle, missing the code, striving against yourself. That's when you really sin, when you strive against yourself, when you strive against the God in you. What causes you to strive against the God in you? Your ego. When you edge God out of you. Now, going back to the identifier, right? I am the light of the world, right? That means when you say that you're the light of the world, right? That means you're the expresser of truth. You're the generator and the operator of truth, destroying the lies, destroying the deception, destroying the bondage. It's like Breaking Bad. Just want that to marinate. Miguel, would you be doing the next step if one is identification and two is comparison? What is three? I don't know if I spoke on that. Said, let me run this question. You said, what would be the next step if one is identification, two is comparison, three got you. Three is transformation. Once you identify it and you identify with the comparison, then what do you do? See, it's the difference between being under the concept of change versus being, in the awareness of change, what's changing in the inside of you, you know, that's what, it's called manifestation, you know, manifestation, right? Man, in transformation, transforming, you know, that's when you become awakened. That's when you become a star, right? Remember a Mackology video where the gentleman, Seymour, said he's a superstar, right? And I broke it down um, as basically following the path that chose me, which is the awakening, you know. And before, you know, you awaken, you have to, you know, realize, recognize, identify, you know, that wisdom and power within your mind, you know. It's the unfoldment of the mind that, has its, you know, quality and star promise, which leads on to wisdom and further into understanding. Then final, the glory, in the sun of the righteousness, right? Or the right standing, which makes you the son of God. You know, the star or the light in you, right, represents your inner conviction, of your divine sonship, right? Remember he said Starship Enterprise? I'm not the prize, but I'm the Starship Enterprise. As the sunship, you know, as a conviction or your ability to accomplish whatever you undertake calls forth, the best, in you, which helps to succeed where others of, you know, uh, I would say even equal ability, right? Fail, you know. See, it's the accumulation of the wisdom and the experience of your life that makes you a wise man, or a star from the east, you know. So you can rejoice in the faith and in your own destiny to do the will of God that is in you, which begins to rise within you, and all the riches of the wise, experiences. Remember, I said it's history and experiences. See, don't get me wrong. Your subconscious mind is helpful in a sense, but then harmful, just like your ego. It can be helpful and it can be harmful. Your subconscious mind is like this. Your subconscious mind, you know, um, brings things back to remembrance, sometimes good, bad memories. Uh, but that's why it's important for you to change your perspective. When you change your perspective, you change your perception because, you're going to look at certain things that might have appeared to be negative. Remember, he said what you meant for harm. Yusuf said what you meant for harm, God meant for good. The God in me brought it to good because I changed my perspective on it. It's like when you look at the New Testament where it says all things work out to the good that those that are called, right, by God. Now, what are you called to do? You're called to be reconnected to the heavens, to the truth of you, to the higher you, to facilitate the power. And this is when you become the new man. And when you look at, you know, three wise men of the East, right? Where do they bring frankincense and myrrh, you know, and bestowed it upon the young child? See, the thing is, they didn't have books back then. They had to read the constellations and the stars, right? Constellations and the star, they had to connect, with themselves in the sky to know exactly where, the Savior is located, you know? What is the Savior? The Savior is actually located within you. You pull yourself from the grave. You pull yourself from your own death. Remember I said before, it's about coming up in life. Are you now getting it? You made new. Now what is new? You know, it's a new birth. It's a realization, you know, by you of this newfound identity. The spiritual one, the spiritual self. With the fullness of the power and the glory that follows behind it. It's a birth that is coming into your state of being, your state of manhood. And this is when you think as yourself, not as your flesh. Are you getting it? That's why I don't get into the thing where they talk about gifts and prizes and men's the prize and you know because the wise men brought the gifts at the feet of God. So if a woman says she's the prize, let her say she's the prize. You know, essentially she's your gift to you. S- Determines how you want to wrap that present and utilize that material. You know, It's all about the quality of your mind, given by that divine wisdom.